Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Tristan Kumar advises you to put your hands together for the one, the only Dying Planet, the prison of the survivors. Narrated by your host, the one, the only Tristan Kumar. Part 19, The Other Worlds. Great, I said as I walked back to Jamal looking into the hole. Handle the situation with the scorpion we got here, and I'll deal with our friend Chris. Got it? You sure you want to? He started. Got it? I asked more intensely. He looked at me and sighed. He walked to the table and grabbed the jetpack and handed it to me. Just don't believe everything he says. He's told me some messed up things before in the flare, and I've been trying to forget, but I just can't. So please don't end up like me, alright? He said. I put on the jetpack and nodded at him. I'll leave my destiny for another day, because whatever's about to happen will not, because I will change it, I said, determined, and nodded as he looked at me in utter confusion. I smiled and fell back into the world of the unknown. I turned and saw distant lights and the many shards of glass in this new dimension. I dived down through them all. Through everything, I seemed to see eyes watching me, or so I thought. I couldn't even tell anymore. I flew further and further into the void, escaping my life of reality. I thought about what Chris had said. Would that mean that Sylvie wasn't real? My life wasn't real? The world I knew wasn't even real? I thought harder and harder, but remembered what Jamal had said about not believing what Chris had said. I shrugged it off as I reached the light. I slowly began to squint, but never stopped diving. I dived straight through the lights and flew out into a new world. I could see a sunset as I dove down, but there was something wrong with where I was. There was land above me and below me, the eternal horizon. I looked back down and saw Chris falling through the air. On the ground, I was heading toward a small town. There were some trees, but not much. It seemed to be empty, but I didn't know for sure. I dived even faster and eventually turned my feet downwards and activated my jetpack. I slowly sailed to the ground and landed. I walked around looking for Chris, hiding in the city. I looked around in the forest I landed in and saw a body running into the town. I ran after him. Jumping over the roots, I sprinted after the mysterious figure as he ran into the city. There were small streets with stone bricks on them. It was a regular country village. I ran up to the empty streets, looking around for the person. I ended up in the center of a village and saw a fountain. I went to the fountain and looked in the reflection of the static water. I saw myself and looked into my eyes. I tried to reach my other self, the violent soul inside of me. I couldn't see anything. In the reflection, I did see someone in the air behind my reflection with a sword coming down on me. Before I almost turned to look, I saw my reflection smile, which I most definitely did not do. Shocked, but not minding it, I turned away and rode out of the way from Chris. He ripped his sword out of the stone of the water fountain, and water began to rush out through the cracks. I reached behind my back, expecting to grab any weapon, but found nothing. Instead, I found a black circular disc. I looked at it, and it flashed red. I realized what this was because I saw it on Jamal. He must have snuck it onto me before I jumped in. I placed it on my chest, and black armor with a red design began to smoothly form over my body. I closed my eyes as the suit went down my legs, behind my back, and through my arms. I opened my eyes and looked at Chris as the helmet with a long red visor formed around my head. I stood at the ready for anything. We both stared at each other for a few moments. Then Chris launched towards me. I dodged his punch and tried to knee him in the chest, but I missed, and he managed to slam me down to the ground. He jumped up to slam his fist down onto me again, but I jumped up just in time and kicked him back. We both stood up at the ready once more. Now, both awake and ready, we both ran at each other and tried to punch each other, but instead, I rolled under his punch, and he expected it, and kicked me in the face, and ran farther, and then turned back to face me. "Going a bit easy on me?" I said, mocking him. He grunted and ran at me again. This time, he was trying to land a kick on my side, but I caught his leg and punched his knee. He cried out in pain as I stood him up on my right. I elbowed him with my right arm and then punched him with my left. I grabbed the back of his head and slammed it into my knee. That sent him back. I raised my fist for a final blow. I gained my strength and slammed my fist into his face. I continued to punch him more and more and more. I tried to stop myself, but something inside me was urging me to kill him. I tried to jump back, but my feet were planted by an uncontrollable force inside of me. I winced, trying to pry myself away, and while distracted, the beaten Chris grabbed his gun from his side and shot me in the chest. I fell back to the ground and tried to stand up, but he shot me again and again and again. I yelled in pain and winced as he continued to fire at me, seeming to never stop as I had never stopped. He started to shoot me in the face. I winced as my vision became red. He came up to me on the ground and ripped off my armor disc. As the armor started to fade away, he started to punch me in the face. Brutally. He didn't care if I was a child. He would kill me. Blood flew out of my mouth every time he struck my face. I screamed in pain as he hit me over and over and over again. He grabbed his knife and tackled me to the ground, intending to kill me. As the last of my armor faded away, I held back the knife with the rest of my power, but I was too weak, and it got closer and closer to my chest. I pushed it back and punched him with the last of my strength. He spat out blood onto my face and started kicking me violently. I yelled and winced in pain as I curled up as my bones shattered and cracked. He grabbed his gun again and tried to fire, but he was finally out of ammunition. Instead, he grabbed me and jumped up with his suit. He grabbed my shirt and raised me above his head into the air. Then he threw me to the ground, right onto my back. I screamed in pain as he soared down next to me and grabbed my collar and punched me in the chest. The air was squeezed out of me, and then he punched me in the face. I laid my head back in pain. He looked at me and spat on me. Failure to everyone, Mr. Rye. When will you stop this mutiny? He laughed as he flew off into the light once more. The lights evaporated into thin air as I tried to sit up. I couldn't move at all. I shot open my eyes, and I started to hyperventilate as I thought all of the things I hadn't done. My eyes began to close for the final time, weakly, as I cried in pain. But I saw someone walk up to me and help me up into the fountain's leaking water. My body seemed to heal itself. I slowly regained consciousness and shot my head up out of the water before I drowned. I looked around at the person who had saved me. I've got to say, he said, you look an awful lot like someone I know, he said. I looked into my own face. Instead of doing anything, I looked at myself in curiosity. What's your name? I asked. Rye. And you? He said. I'm Rye, I said. Well, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. You must have gotten some serious brain trauma from that fight you had, he said. You saw that? I said. Yeah, it looked insane, man. If I didn't save you, I think you would have been dead. So, luckily I did, he said. Thank you. Like, a lot, I said. Yeah, no problem, he said. He was so nice, which I loved about myself before I became a vicious murderer. Wait, what did you mean when you said I looked like someone you knew? I said as I helped myself up. Oh, you look like one of my friends when I was younger. His name was Jamal, but I haven't seen him in like 6 years or something, he said as my jaw dropped. This is Jamal's universe, I said to myself, trying to understand where I was. Wait, you know Jamal too? He said. I looked at his innocent face and thought, if I told him that I knew him, then I would have to say what he's been doing and how he's been, which is clearly not good. And then he'll try to do something about it, but if I don't tell him, then he will never know what is missing about his friend. I made the tough decision and said gloomily, No, I know a guy named James, not Jamal. I'm sorry. It's a different person, I said. Oh, it's fine. I don't expect to ever hear from him again, but it'll be great if I get something from him, I guess, he said. I was congratulating myself and my brain for making the right decision, though I still felt really bad. We've got to get you back to where you came from, Mr. Rye, or whatever your real name is, he said. Wait, I can't go back there. I was about to die. I can't do that again, I said. Yeah, but if you believe that what you were fighting for was the right thing, I nodded, then you should finish what you started, right? He finished. I guess you are right. Clever advice from my own self, huh? I said as I put back on the suit of armor. What you said. You should finish what you started. He nodded. Who told you that? I asked as the suit spread around my body. Well, I first heard it from my friend Oscar. I raised my eyebrow but nodded to hide it. But that was before he died. So I don't really try to think about him anymore, so that's fine, he said. Why, do you live here alone? I asked. Yeah, there was some destruction on the other part of the land up there. He pointed up to the other piece of land in the sky. I heard that something called the Flare was blown up, and I was the last one surviving, he said. Oh my God, I feel so bad for you. I'm so sorry, I said as the helmet formed around my head, and I jumped into the air to fly. It's fine, that was 2 years ago, so I'm not dead yet, huh? He joked. I nodded and smiled, then looked at the broken pieces of light in the sky as I reformed the portal where I had entered. Well then, I guess that's all. A pleasure meeting you, Mr. Rye, he said, startling me from my thoughts of my poor self in this lonely universe. I turned and nodded. Yeah, I guess that is it. Well, I looked at him and took a deep breath. Good luck, Rye. You too, Rye, he said, and I nodded and flew to the light. Right before I entered the light, I looked around at the peaceful world. I looked at my other self on the ground, walked away, nodded to myself mentally, and shot through the portal. After a few moments of blinding light, I arrived back in the void of glass shards. I flew back into the warehouse as the void closed and filled with the ground. I looked at the hole in the roof. I saw the night sky and many burn marks. I flew through the hole in the roof and looked around. I scanned the horizon of the outskirts of the town. My eyes passed the bright shining lights of Las Vegas, but I saw something that was closer to me, heading toward Las Vegas. I thought it was a car, but then a blinding red and white light flashed from it, and it seemed like two swords were clashing. There they are, I thought to myself, as I flew toward the lights of America's playground. As I got closer to the moving lights, there were more and more flashes. I got to a certain point where I could see where it was. Of course, it was the Scorpion with Chris and Jamal brawling it out on top with a helpless Sylvie inside. I soared down to it and landed on the Scorpion. Impossible, Chris began to say, but I spun and kicked him off the Scorpion before he could finish. So you got my gift, he said. My helmet shrunk back inside my suit. I mean, it kind of helped, but I still got shot, stabbed, and still a bit discombobulated, but yeah, I'm feeling great, I said. Really? He said, almost impressed. Well, I've just been fighting and trying to steer a death engine away from attacking that city, he said, as he pointed toward the lights of the city. All right, what is our situation? I said, finally putting aside our jokes. All right, Sylvie is stuck inside of here, and we've got to get her out of there before it's too late and it hits the city. We also got to stop this crazy contraption from reaching the city in the first place, he explained. Don't forget Chris, I said. Yeah, that idiot too, he said, as I looked at Chris flying toward us angrily. I pulled out a gun and shot it at him. He fell to the ground, giving us more time. All right, let's get Sylvie out of there first. We don't want any of her blood on her hands, right? I said. Jamal slowly nodded. Yeah, let's get her out of there, Jamal said, as he activated a fire beam from his arm and started to carve into the dense metal Scorpion. As we got closer and closer to Las Vegas, we were getting nowhere on getting Sylvie out. I started to get nervous as Chris slowly began to learn our attacks and dodge them. We looked at each other and immediately knew we had to book it into overdrive to save everyone. Hopefully. This episode was narrated by Tristan Kumar. If you enjoyed this, make sure to check out the final part in Act 4 of Dying Planet, The Prison of the Survivors. And after that, we will move into the final book of this trilogy, which will cover the next 10 parts, of course. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.